and welcome to IDDTalks here at AD University. Now I'm joined by a very distinguished guest from the United Kingdom, Ambassador James Sharp, former UK diplomat and former UK ambassador to the Republic of Azerbaijan. Warm welcome.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your time. Thank you for joining IDDTalks. So, Keir Starmer has announced his resignation after less than 2 years in office. What, in your view, were the key factors that ultimately led to his decision to step down?
Great question. And I think a lot of British people can't quite work out the answer to that one. He is still, of course, still the present Prime Minister until there is a new Prime Minister, and we don't yet have one yet. The party still has to accept nominations or bids to be Prime Minister. They then have to make a decision on that. It's clear what's going to happen. Everyone knows that Andy Burnham will be the next Prime Minister, but technically Keir Starmer will be the Prime Minister until at the earliest, about July the 20th or something like that. In terms of the factors that caused him to step down, at a very kind of a narrow level, it was because his members of parliament did not have confidence that they would win the next election with him as Prime Minister. And, that's the problem that came about was really triggered by the local council elections in May, when the Labour Party did really, really badly. And Reform, the right-wing populist party, and the Greens, a left-wing populist party, did very, very well. So it's like in Britain, as in many European countries, almost like the centre of politics has almost collapsed. And it's really, politics is now going to the extremes, if you like, both right-wing and left-wing. And that left the MPs in a very difficult position, is that we don't think that we can win the next election with Keir Starmer. So why has the centre collapsed? Again, a very good question. I think that voters are perhaps just becoming too demanding. Their expectations are too high, not recognising that the economic situation in Britain is bad, and that therefore big changes are needed. And people don't want to give up benefits. They think that government should do more and more for them, and that they refuse to give anything up. And it's we're seeing this as well in countries like France and Germany, with the rise of sort of the right and left wing populists as well. So I think it's quite a European thing at the moment, unfortunately. But there are a whole host of reasons why Starmer himself was not considered to be a good Prime Minister. But I think, as I say, the trigger was really his Labour Party MPs thinking that they would not win an election with him as Prime Minister.
Ambassador, the UK has now seen several changes of Prime Minister in the past decade. Does this point to a deeper structural problem in a British domestic political system?
Yes, the simple answer to that. What the solution is very, very difficult to work out. It's quite extraordinary, actually, when you think about it, that before Keir Starmer, the only Prime Minister who came to power, the last Prime Minister that came to power in an election, was David Cameron in 2010. Since then, we've had Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and Rishi Sunak, who have become Prime Minister without an election. And now we're getting a Labour Prime Minister without an election. So it's quite an extraordinary situation that people just start to say that Britain is just ungovernable. I think that a lot of that change, a lot of those problems clearly happened as a result of the Brexit referendum in 2016, when the Conservative Party which was in power at the time, David Cameron resigned, and the Conservative Party then had massive internal fights about how to implement Brexit. And that was what then led to all of these changes, I think, and there's all this political infighting within the Tory party. And that was also partly why I think there was a landslide victory for Labour in 2024, when people just fed up of all of this Tory party infighting, inability to do anything. So Keir Starmer was elected on a landslide, but how quickly he's fallen, I know. And I think that it's really, as I say, symptomatic of voters just being too demanding and just expecting too much, quite frankly. It's not just a problem here. as I mentioned, France and Germany and other countries like that do have similar problems where the populists, both left and right wing, have sort of come up with easy solutions, if you like, and they're very, very attractive solutions. So people have now gravitated towards them, and opinion polls show them rising very high, and the collapse of the centre. And it just feels like in all of these countries, the voters just need something of a wake-up call, which is, we just need to get real about our place in the world and about our economic situation, and just really take quite big, drastic decisions to create economic growth and sort of create jobs and improve living standards. But no one can agree upon what the actual answer is.
Well, Andy Burnham is widely expected to become the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. What political and/or economic changes could Britain expect under his leadership?
Well, that's again a very, very good question. No one knows the answer to that either. It's just extraordinary how this person is becoming Prime Minister without anyone having a clear sense of what his policy is, what his policies are. We'll find out later today, I think, when he's due to give quite a big speech, a policy speech. But essentially, as you said, he seems to be talking about more of a focus on devolution and sort of both taking examples from the region, but also more decentralization of power to the regions. Is that a good idea? I don't know. But then again, I guess it's something worth trying. Other than that, we're just not sure. There's a general sense that he will go more leftwards because that's really what the party membership and most of his members of parliament support. They want the party to move more towards the left wing to counter the Greens, the populist Greens party. Maybe more focused on benefits and welfare, redistribution, higher taxes, particularly on more wealthy people. So that seems to be the direction of travel. But again, we won't really have a clear idea until he actually does become Prime Minister, until he appoints his cabinet.
And do you expect it to have any, let's say, influence on the foreign policy of the United Kingdom, particularly its role within NATO, its support for Ukraine, and, let's say, relations with the European Union?
It's a good question. My sense is not very much. One of the interesting things about Keir Starmer's resignation was that one of the immediate triggers was the resignation of the Defence Secretary, who complained that the Prime Minister was not willing to fund the defence budget enough. And the Prime Minister is due to go to a NATO summit quite shortly, in which he'll have to defend the UK's defence expenditure. So there's not been any sense of how the new Prime Minister will face that challenge. As I say, that's if you've got a limited budget, what do you spend it on? And that's part of the issue here. Do you spend it on defence or do you spend it on welfare? And as I say, the sense of Andy Burnham is that he's more interested in supporting his backbenchers, his Labour members of Parliament who prefer to spend more on welfare than defence. But who knows? I think in terms of the European Union, the current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has made moves to try to strengthen the relationship with the EU. And I think that will continue. I don't think there's any difference there at all. The big issue is more about, is the United Kingdom willing to rejoin the EU or rejoin the single market or rejoin the customs union? And we're not quite in that place yet, but I can see that evolving over the next 2 or 3 years. And I think other than that, in terms of general foreign policy, I don't see there being much change, quite honestly. Foreign policy tends to be quite stable, even between Conservative and Labour governments. I think within the Labour government at the moment, and I think it'll probably be fairly stable.
Ambassador, the NATO summit that will take place in Turkey comes at a time of political transition in the United Kingdom. What are the key issues you think Britain is likely to bring to the table at Ankara summit, which will take place quite soon?
I think that we will continue to show very, very strong support for Ukraine as a very, very big foreign and security policy objective for us. I don't think that will change. I think that we will remain very, very committed to NATO. That will not change at all. I think the question, in our sort of defence investment plan flowing from the Strategic Defence Review is the extent to which the UK should focus more on the North Atlantic, where we're located, versus should it actually be looking to focus more on wider geographical operational aspects, so maybe the Gulf, maybe Asia Pacific. And that's been a debate that's been ongoing for several years now, is what should our defence and security posture look like? And I don't think we've quite got there yet. We'll find out a bit more when the Defence Investment Plan is actually published in the next few days. And in terms of that, is both the geography, but also what sort of war, what sort of conflict do you think you need to be prepared for? Arguments about and other countries, are we actually equipping ourselves for the current conflicts or conflicts as they were fought in the past, or do we need to then sort of completely change our posture and think more about the lessons of Ukraine, for example, and future lessons? So drone warfare, the use of AI, space, and all of those. So I think there's some quite big questions, strategic questions out there for any government, not just the British government. And hopefully the Ankara summit will actually bring out some of those longer-term strategic questions for the whole alliance, quite frankly.
Ambassador, the South Caucasus has become significantly important for the United Kingdom, important for European energy security from the perspective of regional connectivity. We do see the active work of the Embassy of the United Kingdom here in the Republic of Azerbaijan. Should we expect any significant changes in London's approach towards Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia itself, the wider region, under the new Prime Minister?
I doubt it, to be honest. As I mentioned, foreign policy tends to be quite stable from one government to another, even between different parties. There may potentially be a change of tone, I don't know, but some of that then comes down to who is appointed Foreign Secretary, who is appointed Minister of State for Europe. But that really, in essence, will be a change of tone rather than a change of substance. And I think that the overall posture is, well, sure, we support the peace agreement with Azerbaijan and Armenia. We definitely support using this as a path to further regional economic development and cooperation. We very much support the idea of the Middle Corridor as being an enabler, not just an alternative route for transport between China and Europe, but as an enabler of economic development in the Central Asia and the Caucasus region, the whole of the Greater Caspian region. That's really, to our mind, the key element that has come out. Originally, it was envisaged as one thing, but now people are realizing actually this has a lot wider ramifications. I think you'll also continue to see a strong UK interest in how to obtain critical minerals, and the whole strategic question about Chinese domination of critical minerals extraction and processing. So all of those things, I think, are very, very strategic questions for us and for the region. So I think that it is every reason why it will continue in very much the same vein.
Well, Ambassador, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining IDDTalks.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Anastasia.